She said Ranger got too needy. That's what she told the woman she sold him to. Not "this dog keeps my husband alive." Not "he's trained to stop suicide flashbacks." No, just too needy. And while I was sleeping in a sandpit half a world away, praying that my nightmares wouldn't make someone pull a gun on me, she listed him on Craigslist, with his vest still on. She didn't just sell my dog, she sold my sanity. She sold the one soul that never let go of me. But what she didn't know was I was already on a plane home, and I wasn't walking through that door alone. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Jackson Merrick, and I'm 35 years old. After 3 combat tours and a medical discharge, I spend my days woodworking in the garage while Ranger, my PTSD service dog, keeps the shadows at bay. My wife April, who I married before my second deployment, used to curl up with us on the couch during thunderstorms. Now she barely glances at Ranger's training vest when she breezes past. Yesterday she didn't answer when I mentioned extending his certification, just clicked her nails on her phone screen and mumbled about a headache. The thing about combat? It teaches you to read silence like a map. Every morning I check my deployment photos, especially the one of Ranger in his vest. I know what betrayal looks like before it strikes. But let me start from the beginning. The morning I shipped out, April's perfume lingered on my uniform, that sweet vanilla scent she always wore. You know the kind I mean? The one that hits you years later in a department store and stops you cold. Ranger sat perfectly still as I knelt to hug him one last time, his brown eyes locked on mine like he was memorizing my face. April had promised to send daily photos, to keep our video chat schedule, to take care of everything. "Don't worry about us," she'd said, straightening my collar. "We'll be right here when you get back." The first month went smooth as silk. April answered my calls right on schedule, usually curled up on our gray couch with Ranger's head in her lap. She'd tell me about her real estate showings, about the wellness blog she'd started, about how Ranger still waited by my side of the bed each night. I'd share what I could about my days, keeping the heavy stuff locked away where it belonged. "Miss you, babe," she'd say, before signing off. "Stay safe." But around week 6, things started shifting. First, it was just missed calls. Totally normal with the time difference, right? Then her texts got shorter. Ranger showed up less in her photos. When I'd ask about him, she'd say he was fine and change the subject. "Just super swamped with work," she'd type. "Talk soon." Soon stretched longer each time. 2 days, 4 days, a week. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the distance was getting to me. Hell, maybe I was. Combat has a way of twisting your thoughts, making threats appear in empty corners. But I couldn't shake this gnawing feeling in my gut. Remember that vanilla perfume I mentioned? I started having trouble remembering exactly how it smelled. Then came that night in the barracks. I jolted awake around 0200, heart hammering, sheets soaked through. The dream had been bad, the kind that usually sent Ranger pressing against my legs, grounding me with his weight and warmth. My hand reached for him automatically before reality crashed back in. I was in a narrow bunk in the desert, and my dog was half a world away. I grabbed my phone, thinking I'd at least look at some photos of him. That's when I noticed April hadn't posted anything in 17 days. Her blog, usually updated weekly, sat untouched. My last 3 messages showed as delivered, but not read. "Hey there, stranger," I typed, trying to keep it light. "Everything okay back home?" The message went through. 1 check mark, 2 check marks. No response. You ever notice how silence changes its shape depending on the space around it? There's the warm silence of Ranger sleeping at my feet while I work in the garage. The respectful silence of standing in formation. The hollow silence of an empty house. But this? This was a different animal entirely. This silence had teeth. I scrolled back through our recent conversations, looking for clues I might have missed. April's responses had gotten increasingly vague, almost mechanical. "All good here. Super busy. Catch up soon." Work's crazy tool. Each one shorter than the last, like she was slowly erasing herself from my life one character at a time. My bunkmate stirred in his sleep, muttering something about mortars. I switched off my phone and lay back, staring at the ceiling fans spinning lazy circles in the dark. The night terror that woke me had already faded, replaced by something worse. Certainty. Because here's the thing about combat. It teaches you to trust your instincts. And every instinct I had was screaming that this silence wasn't about time zones or busy schedules. This was the kind of silence that comes before an ambush. I thought about calling Ben, my old battle buddy back home, to check on things. But what would I say? Hey man, my wife's not texting me enough. I could already hear the responses. I was being controlling, paranoid, letting my PTSD get the better of me. Maybe they'd be right. But Ranger wouldn't just vanish from her photos unless something had changed. He was trained to stay close, to be visible, to provide constant support. His absence felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. 3 days later, I was cleaning my rifle when my phone buzzed. Email from Ben. That wasn't unusual. He'd check in every couple weeks, keep me posted about the neighborhood watch stuff, local gossip. But this subject line stopped me cold. Is this Ranger? My hands weren't shaking. Not yet. I set the rifle down carefully, muscle memory taking over. Everything in its place, just like always. You know that moment when you're about to open something that could change everything? Your finger hovers over the screen, and time sort of stretches? I opened the email. Jax, found this on Craigslist this morning. Tell me I'm wrong. Below was a screenshot, and there he was, my dog, my partner. The photo showed him sitting on what looked like a back porch I didn't recognize, head tilted slightly like he does when he's confused. Black and tan coat gleaming in the sun, that distinctive white patch on his chest barely visible. Trained German Shepherd, under $200 OBO. Great with kids, house-trained, knows basic commands plus some specialty training. No papers available. Serious inquiries only. The rifle cleaning kit clattered to the floor. I didn't remember dropping it. You ever had one of those moments where reality splits? Like you're watching yourself from outside your body, but also feeling everything with this horrible, crystal clarity? That's what it felt like as I zoomed in on that photo, my thumb and finger spreading across the screen until the pixels started to blur. There, on his left hind leg, the small curved scar from when he'd caught himself on a fence during training. I'd know that mark anywhere. Hell, I'd been the one holding him still while the vet stitched it up. Another message from Ben popped up. Tried calling the number, burner phone, but the listing's in your area code. My area code? My town? My dog. The pieces started falling together with the cold precision of a weapon being assembled. April's sudden silence, the missing photos, the way she dodged my questions about Ranger. Each component clicking into place until the full picture emerged. While I was dodging mortars in the desert, my wife was trying to sell my service dog. I'm not proud of what happened next. The sound that came out of me wasn't quite human, somewhere between a laugh and something else. My bunkmate Jorge looked up from his bunk, concern etching deep lines around his eyes. You good, Merrick? The phone shook in my hands. Not from fear, no. This was something else entirely. Something hot and sharp that made my combat training kick in, heart rate steadying even as adrenaline flooded my system. No, I said. I'm really not. I fired off a reply to Ben. 100% him. That scar's unmistakable. What's our play? Ben's response came quick. Already on it. Documenting everything. Got screenshots. Archived the listing. Timestamps. GPS data. All of it. But Jax? What? Listing's been up 3 days. Might already be too late. 3 days. She'd been trying to sell him for 3 days while I was out here, thinking everything was fine. Just busy with work. Just catch up soon. My hands had steadied completely now. Funny how clarity works. Once you know exactly what you're dealing with, the shakes go away. Combat does that to you. Gives you this ability to go cold and focused when everything's falling apart. I pulled up my last text conversation with April. All those short replies, all those excuses. They looked different now. Each one was a brick in a wall she'd been building between us, preparing for this moment. Jorge was still watching me. Need to report something up the chain? I nodded slowly, already composing the emergency leave request in my head. Yeah, I do. My phone buzzed again. Ben, want me to make contact? Pose as a buyer? No, I typed back. Don't spook her. I need to handle this right. Because here's the thing about betrayal. You only get one shot at confronting it. And if April thought she could sell my partner, my lifeline, like some used car, well, she was about to learn exactly what kind of man she'd married. I'd like to say I slept on that flight home, but sleep's a funny thing when your mind's racing through every worst-case scenario. The cargo plane's engines droned on, matching the thunder in my chest. 36 hours of waiting, pleading, and explaining to increasingly sympathetic officers why I needed emergency leave. Thank God for Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. She'd seen Ranger help me through some rough patches during training. Her testimony sealed the deal. You know that feeling when you're approaching a car crash? When everything slows down and your body knows something's wrong before your eyes catch up? That's how it felt pulling into my driveway. The house looked exactly the same. White trim still needed touching up, garden hose still coiled neat beside the garage, but something was off. Too perfect, too staged. I sat there in the rental car, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The neighbor's kid rode past on his bike, did a double take when he saw me. Usually Ranger would be at the fence, tail wagging. The yard was empty. Have you ever noticed how silence has different flavors? This one tasted like copper. My key still worked. Small mercy there. The door swung open and the wrongness hit me like a wave. The house smelled like lemons and artificial lavender. No hint of dog, no water bowl by the kitchen door, no rope toy in the corner where Ranger liked to leave it. I moved through rooms that felt more like a model home than the place I'd left behind. The living room rug, the one Ranger used to sprawl across during thunderstorms, was gone. The couch had no indent where he'd curl up to watch TV with us. Even his bed in the corner had vanished, like he'd never existed. A car door slammed outside, footsteps on the porch. I turned as April walked in, designer shopping bags dangling from one arm. She froze mid-step, face going through a slideshow of expressions. Shock, fear, something that might have been guilt before settling on forced surprise. Jackson? Her voice hit that high note she gets when she's caught off guard. Why aren't you... Where's Ranger? The shopping bags hit the floor. She blinked rapidly, and I watched her compose herself. It was fascinating, really, like watching someone put on armor made of fake smiles. I was going to call you, she said, smoothing her hair back. There was an incident. What kind of incident? He was getting aggressive, snapping at visitors. I had to make a decision. My laugh must have scared her because she took a step back. Aggressive? Ranger? The dog who lets kids braid his tail? You weren't here, she said, voice hardening. You don't know what it was like dealing with him alone. The barking at night, the neediness. The night terrors, I cut in. He barks during night terrors. That's his job, the job he was trained for. The job that keeps me functioning. She crossed her arms. I couldn't handle it anymore. I did what I had to do. By trying to sell him on Craigslist? There it was, the flinch, the mask cracking just enough to show the truth underneath. She recovered quick, but not quick enough. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshot. 3 days ago. That's our back porch. That's his scar. That's my dog, April. You had Ben spying on me? Her voice rose, going defensive. Checking up on me like some criminal? Where is he? I don't have to... Where is my dog? She stepped back again, bumping into the wall. I hadn't moved, hadn't raised my voice, but something in my face must have changed because suddenly she couldn't meet my eyes. He's gone, she whispered. Gone where? I can't. She swallowed hard. I can't tell you that. The new owners want privacy. They're a good family, Jackson. They'll take care of him. The room spun slightly. New owners. Past tense. Done deal. My partner, my lifeline, sold off like a used lawnmower while I was dodging mortars on the other side of the world. How much? What? How much did you sell him for? She lifted her chin, defiant now. That's none of your business. Everything in this house is my business. I looked around at the sterile perfection she'd created. Or was, anyway. I watched her slide into damage control mode, shoulders squaring as she found her footing. The mask was back, perfect and practiced. Oh, I just remembered. She snapped her fingers like this was all some silly mix-up. Ranger's at the groomer's. You know how he gets this time of year, all that shedding. At 8 p.m.? Well, no, She tucked her hair behind her ear, buying time. He's actually staying at the Hendersons tonight. Their daughter loves him so much, and I had some errands to run. My jaw clenched. The Hendersons had moved to Florida 3 months ago. I'd helped their son load the moving truck. Try again. She threw up her hands. Honestly, Jackson, you must have misunderstood something. Maybe Ben saw a similar dog. German Shepherds all look alike in photos, don't they? Not when they have a distinctive scar from catching barbed wire during training. Not when the photo shows our own backyard fence. Not when the seller's phone number matches our area code. I needed air, needed to think. I walked past her toward the garage, my sanctuary since day one. The place where I'd spend hours working wood, Ranger stretched out nearby, both of us finding peace in the rhythm of sawing and sanding. The door squeaked. It never used to squeak, and I hit the light switch. You know that moment when your brain refuses to process what your eyes are seeing? That's what hit me. My workbench stood bare. The pegboard wall where I'd hung every wrench, screwdriver, and chisel was empty. No toolboxes underneath. No supplies on the shelves. April. My voice sounded strange, even to me. Where are my tools? Oh, that. She waved dismissively. I've been decluttering. You know, that whole Marie Kondo thing? If it doesn't spark joy, those tools were my life. I moved closer to the bench, running my hand over the scarred wood. Some were gifts from my unit. Others were my grandfather's. They were just collecting dust. She followed me into the garage, arms crossed. Besides, you're never here to use them. Never here, because I was deployed, serving, trusting her to keep our home safe. I turned slowly. What did you do with them? Donated them. She shrugged, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. To one of those veterans' charities, I think. Or maybe Goodwill? It's been a few weeks. I don't really remember. Lies. Every word. I could taste them in the air. The garage felt too small suddenly, too empty, like everything that made it mine had been surgically removed. Just like Ranger, just like my peace of mind. I pulled out my phone again, fingers steady despite the storm building inside me. The police department's non-emergency number was still in my contacts from when I'd helped the neighbors file a noise complaint last year. April's eyes widened. What are you doing? Filing a report. For what? Her voice pitched higher. They're just old tools, the dispatcher answered, professional and calm. I gave my name, address, military ID number, explained about the missing property, tools, equipment, service dog, asked for an officer to take a statement. April's face went from indignant to panicked. You can't be serious. I'm your wife. I covered the phone. Then act like it. 10 minutes later, I stood in our driveway, watching a patrol car pull up while I dialed Ben's number. He picked up before the first ring ended. Jax. His voice was granite solid, grounding. Tell me. She sold him. The words tasted like ash. Ranger's gone. My tools too. Everything. A long breath on the other end. I'm on my way. Don't let her leave. Don't let her delete anything from her phone. You hear me? Yeah, I mean it, Jax. Don't do anything stupid. I'll be there in 40 minutes. 39 more than I need to. Stop. Ben's tone could have frozen hell. You're better than that. We do this right, or we don't do it at all. Clear? I watched the young officer approach, notepad already out. April stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, looking lost now that her lies had nowhere left to land. Clear, I said finally. Ben showed up at 7 the next morning, carrying 2 black coffees and his old department laptop. His limp was more pronounced than usual. Weather must have been getting to his knee again. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night pacing the guest room while April locked herself in our bedroom, probably texting whoever she'd been conspiring with. You look like hell, Ben said, handing me a coffee. Feel worse. The first sip burned, but I needed it. April's still here, but she's not talking. Ben set his laptop on the kitchen table. She doesn't need to. Digital footprints never lie. That was Ben, methodical, thorough. Back when he worked cyber fraud, he'd taught me that everything leaves traces. Deleted doesn't mean gone. Hidden doesn't mean safe. He'd shown me how to track down the guy who'd scammed my mother out of her pension 2 years ago. First things first, he said, fingers flying over the keyboard. Let's see what your wife's been up to online. I pulled up a chair. The kitchen still smelled like April's morning coffee. Hazelnut. Always hazelnut. Funny how normal everything seemed, even when your world's imploding. Ben started with her browser history. Most people forget about autofill, he muttered. Password managers are a goldmine. The first red flag popped up in her email, dozens of messages to local pawn shops asking about vintage tools and collectible equipment. Each one dated back to when I'd first deployed. Jesus, I breathed. She didn't donate anything. Nope. Ben pulled up a chain of Venmo transactions. Look here, gear sale. Workshop clear out. All to someone named Craig Densmore. The name hit like a punch to the gut. Who the hell is Craig? Ben was already typing. Let's find out. Social media gave us the answer. Craig Densmore, local real estate agent, gym selfie enthusiast, and apparently April's new friend. His profile was full of shots showing off his gold chain and what he called his success lifestyle. Keep scrolling, Ben said quietly. Then I saw it. A post from 3 weeks ago, April and Craig at some backyard barbecue. They're standing close, too close, both holding wine glasses. But what stopped my heart was Ranger, my dog, my partner, sitting stiffly beside them. His tail was straight, ears forward, classic stress signals I'd learned to read years ago. He wasn't happy. Son of a bitch, I whispered. Ben kept digging. The evidence piled up like bodies after an ambush. Restaurant check-ins, concert tickets, weekend getaways, all funded by selling pieces of my life. My grandfather's hand-carved chisels, the socket set my unit gave me before my second tour, the rare hardwoods I'd been saving for special projects. Everything converted to cash, then spent on romantic dinners and gifts for Craig. Here's the kicker, Ben said, turning the screen. Ranger's sale. The Craigslist post was gone, but Ben had screenshots. The listing price, $1,200. The contact info matched a burner phone, but the Venmo trail showed the truth. A payment from Craig's cousin Linda marked GSD rehoming fee. My hands clenched. The coffee cup cracked. Easy, Jax. Ben's voice anchored me. We've got her dead to rights. But we do this smart. He was right. The military taught me that rage makes you sloppy. Strategy wins wars. What's our next move? Ben smiled grimly. We find Linda. Bet she didn't know she was buying a certified service dog. I heard movement upstairs. April, probably wondering why voices were coming from her carefully cleaned kitchen. The kitchen she'd probably planned to share with Craig once I was out of the picture. You sure Linda will help? I asked. People get weird about dogs, Ben said. Show her ranger certification. Tell her your story. Bet she folds like wet cardboard. He was already pulling up property records, hunting for Craig's family connections. The man was a machine when he had a target. I stared at the barbecue photo again. April's smile looked different now. Brittle, performative. Like everything else about her, it was just for show. I trusted her, Ben. I know. He squeezed my shoulder. That's on her, not you. Now let's go get your dog back. Ben drove us straight to the sheriff's office, his jaw set in that way retired cops get when they're back on a case. The morning sun caught his salt and pepper buzz cut as he parked his truck. Let me do the talking first, he said. Sheriff Nance and I go way back. You ever notice how government buildings all smell the same? That mix of coffee, paper, and industrial cleaner that screams official business. The sheriff's office was no different. Sheriff Nance met us in her office, her braids pulled back tight, uniform crisp as always. She listened without interrupting while Ben laid out what we'd found. The sales, the messages, the Craigslist post. I handed over Ranger's service dog certification and my military paperwork. This is concerning, she said, studying the documents. Especially given your service status, Mr. Merrick. But pet custody cases get complicated without clear ownership papers. My throat tightened. He's not just a pet, ma'am. He's my certified PTSD service animal. She nodded slowly. That helps. But we still need to prove your wife didn't have authority to transfer ownership. These online sales, those we can act on immediately. She pulled out a form. Let's start with a civil theft complaint. Ben leaned forward. Time's critical here, Carla. If they realize we're looking, that dog could disappear again. I understand. She turned to her computer. Give me everything you have on this Craig Densmore and the sale. Ben pulled up the barbecue photo. This was posted 3 weeks ago. Ranger's clearly visible. Sheriff Nance studied the image. Good. Digital evidence leaves metadata. My tech team can... Already on it, Ben interrupted, sliding over his laptop. Photo was taken at 1423 Maple Grove Road. Property records show it belongs to Linda Densmore Hayes, Craig's cousin. I remembered that name from the Venmo payment. My hands clenched the arms of my chair. Steady, Ben murmured. He knew my triggers, the way my knuckles went white when the anxiety spiked. Sheriff Nance made a call, speaking in that measured way law enforcement uses when they're being recorded. Ms. Hayes, this is Sheriff Nance. We need to verify ownership of a German Shepherd recently purchased through a private sale. Would you be available this morning for a brief visit? There was a pause. I could hear a woman's voice, confused but agreeable. Thank you. We'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to Maple Grove Road felt like another deployment. that same tension coiling in my gut. The sheriff's cruiser led the way, Ben's truck following close behind. I watched suburban houses roll past, wondering which one held my partner. Linda's place was a tidy ranch style with a fenced backyard, the same one from the photo. She met us at the door, a slim woman in her early 40s wearing yoga pants and a worried expression. "Ms. Hayes," Sheriff Nance began, "we're here about the German Shepherd you purchased recently." Linda's face fell. "Is something wrong? The seller said everything was legal." "Ma'am," I cut in, my voice rougher than intended. "That dog is my certified service animal. I have documentation." I pulled out my phone, showed her photos of Ranger and me during training, his certification, everything. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh God, I had no idea. Craig's girlfriend. She said they needed to rehome him because of allergies. "Craig's girlfriend," I repeated. "You mean April?" Linda nodded. She seemed so nice, said her husband was deployed and they'd agreed to sell the dog. She looked at me closer. "You're the husband?" "Yes, ma'am." She glanced at the sheriff, then back to me. Could we speak privately for a moment?" Sheriff Nance nodded. "We'll wait here." Linda led me through her house to the back door. "He's been acting strange," she said softly. "Anxious. Pacing at night. Now I understand why." She opened the door, and there he was. Ranger lay in a patch of sun, head on his paws. His ears twitched at the sound of the door. Then he caught my scent. His head snapped up. Those dark eyes locked onto mine. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then his tail started wagging. The world narrowed to just me and my dog. Ranger launched himself off the deck, clearing 3 steps in a single bound. He slammed into my legs with enough force to make me stumble, but I didn't care. His whole body wiggled as he whined and pressed against me, trying to get closer even though there wasn't an inch of space between us. You ever have a moment where your heart feels like it might burst? Like it's too full of emotion to keep beating normally? That's what it felt like, kneeling there with my arms around my battle buddy, his familiar scent filling my nose. Remember how your favorite stuffed animal smelled when you were a kid? That comfort you can't explain? Multiple that by 1,000. "I'm here, boy," I whispered, my voice rough. "I got you." Linda stood on the deck, wiping her eyes. I've never seen him like this. He's been so reserved, almost depressed. She swallowed hard. I should have known something wasn't right. I pulled out Ranger's old collar from my pocket, the one with his service dog tags and my unit patch. The metal clinked as I held it up. "This is his real collar. April must have switched it before." She gave him a plain black one. Linda's voice cracked. "Said the old one was worn out." God, I feel so stupid. "You're not stupid." I stood up, keeping one hand on Ranger's head. "You got played by professionals. They knew exactly what they were doing." Linda came down the steps, her arms wrapped around herself. "I paid cash, $1,500. Craig said they needed it that day." She met my eyes. "I really thought I was helping." I nodded, my jaw tight. $1,500. They'd marked him up from the Craigslist post, turned my partner into a profit margin. "Would you like to see his training certificates?" I pulled out my phone, but Linda was already shaking her head. "No, please, I believe you. The way he responded to you." She knelt down and gave Ranger one final pat. "He belongs with you. I'm so sorry this happened. Thank you." The words felt inadequate, but they were all I had. For taking care of him. For doing the right thing now. She nodded, tears spilling over. Will there be legal consequences? For me?" "No, ma'am." I gestured to where Ben and the sheriff waited. "You're a victim here too. We'll need a statement about the sale, but that's all." Linda gave her statement while I got Ranger settled in Ben's truck. My boy wouldn't let me out of his sight. When I stepped away to grab his food bowl, he started whining like he used to after my worst episodes. That sound cut straight through me. "It's okay," I told him, climbing into the passenger seat. "Not leaving you again." He immediately sprawled across the bench seat, putting his head in my lap. The familiar weight centered me, grounded me in a way nothing else could. You know that feeling when you've been carrying something heavy for so long you forget what normal feels like? Then suddenly the weight lifts and you can breathe again? That's what having Ranger back felt like. But under that relief, something darker was building. A fury so cold it burned. Ben started the engine. "You good?" "Yeah." I scratched behind Ranger's ears, focusing on the soft fur under my fingers. "No, I don't know." Normal response. Ben pulled onto the main road. What's going through your head? She sold him. The words tasted like metal. My service dog? My partner? She knew what he meant to me, what he does for me, and she sold him like a used lawnmower. I know, brother. Our anniversary's next week. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets roll past. 7 years since I promised to trust her with everything I am. Ben glanced at me. What are you thinking? I pulled out my phone, hit speaker, and dialed the sheriff's office. This is Jackson Merrick. I need to file for an emergency hearing about the civil theft complaint. Yes? I'll hold. Ranger's head pressed harder against my leg, like he could sense the storm building inside me. I buried my fingers in his fur, anchoring myself in the present. I'm thinking it's time April learns what betrayal really costs. You ever notice how time moves differently when you're planning something big? That week between getting Ranger back and our anniversary felt like one long, stretched-out moment. Every minute had purpose. Every detail mattered. I spent the first night at Ben's cabin just holding Ranger while he slept. The nightmares came anyway, but this time, when I jolted awake gasping about sand and smoke, he was right there, his weight against my chest, his steady breathing. It was like finding my compass after being lost for months. He hasn't left that spot since you dozed off, Ben said from his recliner, pretending he hadn't stayed up watching over both of us. The morning light caught the silver in his buzz cut as he handed me coffee. So, what's the play here? I took a slow sip, letting the bitter warmth clear my head. We do this clean, by the book. My hand found Ranger's ear, scratching that spot that always made his leg twitch. No drama, no screaming. Just facts and consequences. Ben nodded, that cop's patience settling over him. Sheriff Nance called while you were sleeping. She's reviewing the evidence package. Sales receipts, social media posts, the whole trail. Good. I pulled out my phone, checked April's Instagram. New post, her morning smoothie, carefully arranged next to a self-help book. Blessed Trark Anniversary Week. My thumb hovered over the screen. She has no idea what's coming. The next few days moved like a military op. Ben and I gathered every scrap of documentation, vet records, service dog certification, training logs, deployment papers. Sheriff Nance's office processed the civil complaint with quiet efficiency. They understood what was at stake. Meanwhile, April kept up her performance. Yoga poses by the pool. Inspirational quotes about living your truth. One morning, I drove past our house and saw Craig's truck in the driveway. My knuckles went white on the steering wheel, but I kept driving. Patience. The time would come. I got my hair trimmed, bought a new blue button-down. The color April always said brought out my eyes. Even picked up her favorite wine, that sweet Moscato she'd special order for celebrations. Ben raised an eyebrow when he saw the bottle. Part of the show, I explained, setting it carefully in his fridge. She'll expect something for our anniversary, so I'm giving her exactly what she expects, right before everything changes. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Ranger sensed it, staying close as I paced Ben's back deck. The stars were out, countless pinpoints of light in the country darkness. I thought about all the nights overseas when I'd looked up at those same stars, missing home, missing her, missing the life I thought we had. You were right, boy, I whispered to Ranger. You never did trust her completely, did you? Morning came clear and cool. I showered, dressed, checked every document twice. The wine went into a gift bag with tissue paper, just like every other anniversary. Ben made coffee while I went through the mental checklist one last time. Remember, he said, handing me a travel mug. Let the sheriff lead. Stay calm. I know. I took a deep breath, catching the scent of gun oil and leather from his old service holster hanging by the door. Familiar. Grounding. I've got this. We drove separately to a quiet street 1 block from my house. Sheriff Nance was already there, her cruiser gleaming in the morning sun. She stepped out, uniform crisp, expression professionally neutral. Mr. Merrick. She shook my hand, then Ben's. Are you ready? I looked down at the gift bag, at the manila envelope of legal papers, at my reflection in her cruiser's window. The man looking back wasn't broken anymore. He had purpose. Yes, ma'am. I'm ready. We walked toward the house together, our footsteps steady on the familiar sidewalk. The morning was quiet, except for distant lawnmowers and children's voices, normal suburban sounds, but nothing about this day would be normal. April's car sat in the driveway, right where I knew it would be. She always slept late on anniversaries, waiting for breakfast in bed. Today she'd get something else entirely. Sheriff Nance took position slightly ahead of me as we reached the front door. The doorbell echoed inside, the same chime I'd installed 3 years ago. I heard movement, then footsteps. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and there she was, wrapped in a wine-colored silk robe I'd never seen before, the kind of thing you wear when you're expecting someone, just not your husband. April's smile froze, then shattered, as her eyes moved from me to Ranger to Sheriff Nance's badge. Her fingers clutched the robe tighter at her throat. "Jackson?" Her voice cracked on my name. What is this?" I held up the gift bag with her favorite wine. "Happy anniversary, April." She stared at the bag like it might bite her. Behind me, I heard the soft click of the sheriff's body cam activating. "Mrs. Merrick," Sheriff Nance stepped forward, her tone professional but firm. "I'm Sheriff Carla Nance. I need to speak with you regarding some property disputes." April's face went through a series of micro-expressions: shock, fear, calculation. Then she settled on confused innocence. "Property disputes? I don't understand. Jackson, why is there a sheriff here? And how did you—" She pointed at Ranger, who sat perfectly still beside me, watching her with those knowing eyes. "Ma'am," Sheriff Nance continued, "we have documentation of several unauthorized sales of personal property belonging to your husband, including attempts to sell his service animal." "That's ridiculous." April's laugh was sharp, brittle. "I would never— There must be some mistake. Jackson's been deployed. He's under a lot of stress." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "We have the Craigslist posting," I said quietly. "The Venmo transfers. The social media photos with Craig." The color drained from her face. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell the truth. Instead, she straightened her spine and switched tactics. "You don't understand," she said, her voice taking on that gentle, patronizing tone she'd use when my nightmares woke her. "Jackson's PTSD. It makes him see threats everywhere. He gets paranoid, imagines things." "Mrs. Merrick," Sheriff Nance cut in, "the evidence is quite clear. We have documented sales of tools and equipment from your shared residence, followed by monetary transfers to your personal accounts. We have witnesses who can verify the attempted sale of a registered service animal. This isn't about anyone's mental health. This is about property theft." April's eyes darted between us, then fixed on the body cam's blinking light. Her mask slipped. "You're recording this?" "Standard procedure, ma'am." I watched my wife, the woman I'd trusted with everything, calculate her options in real time. Her gaze landed on Ranger again, and something ugly flashed across her face. "That dog," she spat, "gets more attention than I do. Do you know what it's like, living with someone who needs an animal just to function? Who wakes up screaming? Who—" "Mrs. Merrick," Sheriff Nance's voice carried a warning. "I'm here to serve you with documentation regarding civil theft charges and fraudulent sale of property." She held out a thick manila envelope. "These papers detail the evidence collected and the legal proceedings being initiated." April didn't take the envelope. Her hands were shaking now, but her voice turned venomous. "You have no idea what I've put up with. The nightmares, the anxiety, the constant hypervigilance. I needed something normal, someone normal. You can't blame me for— Actually, ma'am," Sheriff Nance said, "the law is quite clear about selling property that isn't yours to sell. Your husband's medical history isn't relevant to these charges." I finally spoke up, my voice steady. "The tools were my grandfather's, April. And Ranger? He's not property. He's the reason I can sleep at night, the reason I can function. And you sold him like a used couch." The truth of it hung in the air between us. April's face contorted, tears starting to fall. But I recognized these tears. They weren't remorse. They were rage at being caught. "This is harassment," she hissed. "I'll file a complaint. I'll tell them how unstable you are, how—" "Everything you're saying is being recorded, Mrs. Merrick," Sheriff Nance reminded her. "Now, please take these papers." April stared at the envelope, then at the camera, then at me. The magnitude of her situation finally seemed to hit her. Without another word, she snatched the papers and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. 2 days after the confrontation, I was sitting at Ben's kitchen table, nursing a black coffee and scrolling through my phone, when the first text came in. It was from Marcus, April's coworker at the real estate office. "Hey man, just saw the body cam video in Valley Heights Community Watch. Holy shit. I had no idea. I'm so sorry." I set the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. Ranger nudged my knee, and I scratched behind his ears. You know that moment when you're bracing for an explosion and the fuse is already lit? That's how it felt. Within hours, my phone kept lighting up with similar messages. The video had spread through local Facebook groups like wildfire. Each notification made my stomach clench, but I couldn't look away. It wasn't just the confrontation footage. People were sharing screenshots of April's Craigslist posts, the backyard BBQ photos with Craig, everything. "Did you see what happened at the office today?" Ben asked, walking in with more coffee. He'd been keeping tabs on April through his old police contacts. I shook my head. HR called her in. Someone sent them the video. She's on administrative leave pending investigation into conduct unbecoming. He sat down across from me. Turns out trying to sell a veteran service dog doesn't play well with the client base. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I remembered how proud April had been when she got that job, her first step into real estate. She'd practiced her professional smile in the mirror for weeks. "That's not all," Ben continued, checking his phone. "Craig's gone. Packed up sometime last night. Left half his stuff behind from what I hear. Just a note saying he can't handle the drama." I let out a bitter laugh. Guess he didn't sign up for consequences. Later that afternoon, my lawyer, Patricia Chen, called with an update. "The evidence is bulletproof," she said. "Civil theft, documented fraud, attempted sale of medical equipment. That's what Ranger technically qualifies as. Plus the body cam footage." She paused. "I've never seen a divorce case this clear-cut." I stared out Ben's window at the autumn leaves starting to turn. "How long?" "Given the circumstances and documentation, we can file for an emergency hearing. The judge I'm thinking of doesn't look kindly on theft of service animals." By Friday, Ben's police scanner crackled with familiar addresses. April's apartment complex, a domestic disturbance call, not violence, just April screaming at her landlord in the parking lot. "You can't do this!" Her voice carried through the dispatcher's radio. "I have rights." "Ma'am, please lower your voice," came the officer's response. "This is a civil matter between you and your landlord." Turned out the landlord's wife was an Army mom. She'd seen the video, too. April's lease had a moral conduct clause, something about maintaining the complex's family-friendly reputation. The attempted sale of a veteran's service dog qualified as breach of contract. I spent that weekend in Patricia's office, signing papers. The stack of evidence was thick. Screenshots, bank records, witness statements from Craig's cousin, the body cam footage transcript. Patricia kept saying how solid our case was, how clean the divorce would be. "Most people would be smiling," she noted, watching me initial another page. I looked down at Ranger, dozing under my chair. "Nothing about this feels like smiling." "You're not like most of my clients," she said after a moment. "They usually want blood. I just want it done." And I did. Because here's the thing about revenge. Real revenge, not the movie kind. It's exhausting. Every new text about April's meltdown, every update about her crumbling life, it all felt heavy, not satisfying, just necessary, like lancing an infected wound. The sun was setting when I left Patricia's office that day. I had a folder full of divorce papers under my arm and a court date set for Monday. Ranger walked close beside me, his presence steady and grounding. A few people in the parking lot recognized us from the video. I caught their whispers, saw them pointing discreetly. Back at Ben's place, I sat on his porch swing watching the neighborhood kids play street hockey. Ranger lay at my feet, alert but relaxed. Ben brought out sandwiches and took the chair opposite me. "Papers filed?" he asked. I nodded, unwrapping my sandwich without much appetite. "You did what you had to do, Jax." "Yeah." I looked down at the manila folder beside me. Just waiting for the ink to dry. The courthouse steps felt different this time. No tension in my shoulders, no rage burning holes in my gut. Just the weight of finality as I walked out with the divorce decree in hand. Ranger padded beside me, his nails clicking against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. "Congratulations," Patricia said, matching my pace. "Clean break, just like we planned. House is yours free and clear." April hadn't even shown up to contest it. Her lawyer, some fresh-faced kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, simply nodded along to every term. When the judge asked if there were any objections, the silence felt like victory. You ever notice how some moments feel like punctuation marks? This one was definitely a period. End of sentence, end of story. Ben was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his truck. "Done?" I held up the folder. "Done." "Need help moving back in?" I shook my head. "Something I need to do alone." Well, not completely alone. I scratched behind Ranger's ears. "We've got this, don't we, boy?" The drive home, really home now, took exactly 12 minutes. I counted each one, letting the familiar streets wash over me. The old maple on 3rd still needed trimming. Mrs. Henderson's garden was blooming late this year, purple asters spilling over her fence. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller somehow, less threatening than the last time I'd stood here. The key slid into the lock without hesitation. Inside, April's hasty exit had left ghosts, nail holes where her "Live, Laugh, Love" signs had hung, dust outlines of missing knickknacks, a lingering trace of that vanilla candle she'd always burned. But under it all, I could smell home. Real home. The kind that lives in the bones of a place. Ranger did a thorough inspection, nose to the ground, while I opened windows. Fresh air poured in, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and my neighbor's charcoal grill. My phone buzzed. A text from Ben. "Hardware store's having a sale. Just saying." I smiled. He knew me too well. The garage felt empty without my old workbench, but not for long. I'd ordered the lumber already. Clear cedar, the kind that takes stain like it was born for it. The new tools would come piece by piece, quality over speed. Each one earned, not borrowed or gifted. You know what's funny about rebuilding? It's a lot like those recovery exercises the VA therapist taught me. Small steps, manageable pieces, focus on what's in front of you. First order of business, clear out April's decorative touches. Down came the blessed wooden cutouts and the fake vintage signs about wine o'clock. Into boxes went the throw pillows with inspirational quotes and those mason jars she'd painted for rustic charm. Each item removed felt like setting down a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. The afternoon light slanted through newly naked windows as I measured the garage space. The new workbench would go exactly where the old one had been, but better this time. Deeper drawers, better organization. A place for everything, and everything in its place. That's what my grandfather used to say. Ranger watched from his corner, head on pause, as I sketched the plans on graph paper. The familiar scratch of pencil on paper filled the quiet. No TV running in the background, no forced small talk, no walking on eggshells. Just the kind of silence that heals. My phone buzzed again. Ben had sent a photo of a used lathe for sale. Good condition, fair price. "Early housewarming gift?" "I've got this one," I texted back. Because that's what mattered now. Doing it myself, at my own pace. Each tool replaced would be a choice, not a necessity. Each project completed would be mine, start to finish. The cedar panels arrived that evening, strapped to the delivery truck's roof. The driver helped me unload them, commenting on the grain quality. "Building something special?" I ran my hand along the smooth surface. "Something solid." Later, as the sun set, I sat on my back steps with a cold beer. Ranger dozed beside me, his breathing deep and even. The cedar panels leaned against the garage wall, waiting. Tomorrow, I'd start the build. But tonight? Tonight was for sitting in earned silence, listening to crickets tune up for their evening song, and feeling the last threads of anger unravel into peace. The orbital sander whirred to life under my palm, its familiar vibration grounding me like a meditation. Dust spiraled up in the late afternoon light, catching golden rays through the garage windows I'd installed last week. The new ones, double-paned, professional grade, let in twice the light the old ones did. Ranger didn't even twitch at the noise anymore. He lay sprawled at my feet, one paw occasionally twitching in his dreams. These days, his nightmares came less often. Mine too. Funny how healing works that way. Gradual, like sanding wood. Layer by layer until the rough spots smooth out. The cedar beneath my hands was coming along beautifully. I'd spent weeks on this workbench, getting every detail right. The joints were hand-cut dovetails, strong enough to outlast me. The drawers slid like silk on precision rails. Even the finish was special, a blend I'd mixed myself, bringing out the deep red heart of the wood while protecting its character. Wind rustled through the maple trees outside, carrying the crisp edge of autumn. A few leaves skittered across the concrete floor, somehow sneaking in despite my best efforts to keep the space clean. But I didn't mind anymore. Some disorder was natural, human. Remember those home renovation shows April used to binge watch? Everything had to be perfect, staged, camera-ready. But real workshops, real homes, they breathe, they live. The sawdust in the air caught the light like smoke signals, telling stories only craftsmen could read. I switched off the sander, letting silence settle back in. Not the brittle kind that used to fill these walls, when every word felt like stepping through a minefield. This silence had weight, substance. It was the kind that let you think. Running my fingers along the bench's edge, I felt each minute ridge and valley in the grain. Cedar has a memory. Every line tells about the years it grew, the storms it weathered, the direction it chose to reach toward light. Kinda like people that way. Ranger's tail thumped against the floor as I reached down to scratch his ears. His fur was getting that winter thickness already, dark guard hairs coming in over his tan points. The service dog vest hung on its special hook nearby, cleaned and ready, but here in our space, he could just be a dog. My dog. The sheriff's body cam footage was still floating around social media somewhere, or so Ben told me. I'd stopped checking months ago. Didn't need to. The views, the comments, the community's judgment, none of it mattered anymore. That chapter was closed, filed away like old blueprints you keep but don't need to reference. A dust devil of sawdust twisted up from the floor, dancing in a shaft of sunlight. I watched it spin, remembering something my grandfather used to say about craftsmanship. The real work happens in the quiet moments between the cuts. He was right. The planning, the measuring, the careful consideration, that's where quality lives. The workbench stood solid and true, a testament to patience and precision. Every tool had its place now, each one chosen carefully to replace what was lost. Better tools, in many ways. Ones I'd selected for their balance, their durability, their honest functionality rather than their shine. Ranger shifted in his sleep, sighing contentedly. Above him, my new pegboard displayed the growing collection. Hand planes, chisels, measuring tools, each one hanging at exactly the right height and angle for easy access. No more rummaging, no more making do, no more compromise. The light was getting that honey gold quality that meant evening was coming on. Soon I'd sweep up, close shop for the day, maybe fire up the grill, eat dinner on the back deck while Ranger patrolled his territory. Simple pleasures, earned through hard work and clear conscience. I ran the sander one more time, smoothing out a stubborn rough patch. The machine's hum filled the space with its purposeful song, and something clicked in my mind, a truth that had been waiting to be spoken. Setting down the sander, I looked at the bench, at Ranger, at this space we'd reclaimed together. The words came naturally, like the final piece of a project falling into place. A man's silence isn't weakness, it's just storing thunder. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.